Okay, it's in the books now, Stephanie. I think it's fair to say a landslide win for Sir Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. What do we think that may mean for economic policy going forward, if anything?
Well, we have a first female Chancellor of the Exchequer, almost certainly, a woman called Rachel Reeves, who we're going to get to know. She is actually a former Bank of England economist and is considered to be very by the book, quite orthodox in her approach to economics. So at some level, this is certainly not a Jeremy Corbyn style incoming Labour government, very more in the tradition of Blair, and that's what Keir Starmer has done with the Labour Party. He's managed to sort of drag it back from that fringe period under Jeremy Corbyn and make it an electable alternative to the Conservatives. And boy, the voters really wanted an alternative to the Conservatives. They gave them an absolute kicking in this election. Didn't really plant a lot more votes for Labour, but had a half of the votes for the Conservatives. The focus is going to be on growth. I think the big difference, if there is one, will be potentially the approach to Europe and the rigorous focus on house building and investment. You know, that is something where the previous government had not wanted to, you get a lot of arguments from people, oh, I don't want to have that wind farm on my ground, near me, I don't like it, I don't want to have this new housing estate near me. They have promised that they're going to push through that opposition, but I guess we'll wait and see.
Well, they've promised they're going to push through that. At the same time, as I understand, they've largely promised they're not going to increase taxes, at least in the vast majority of areas. So when you talk about the new Chancellor of the Exchequer, it's her job now to come up with the money for that investment. Where's that money going to come from?
Well, so her answer to that is faster growth. But of course, you have a chicken and egg problem. So if the UK had just grown at its long-term average rate after the global financial crisis, after 2008, the economy would be 40% larger now, and there would be a lot more tax revenues to fund a lot more of the demand for public services that is undeniably there in the UK, pent-up demand. We've had much weaker growth than that. And it's hard to sort of immediately turn on the switch. But I think she will be looking for ways to get credit from the independent fiscal watchdog for things that she's doing now affecting growth over the longer term. So if she does things that really convince that watchdog, oh, actually growth could be a little bit higher over the next few years, well, potential growth is going to go up, well, that will also actually give her a bit more room on the spending side because it'll look more sustainable over time.
So, Stephanie, when you talk about the actual growth versus the potential growth for the British economy, some of us might think a question about Brexit and what effect it had on that differential. At the same time, I don't recall a lot of discussion of Brexit at all in this election. It doesn't sound like Sir Keir Starmer is going to be saying, let's get back into the European Union. So how are they going to bring back the actual growth without addressing the Brexit issues?
I think it's been a controversial question, and there's been a lot of pressure. When you look at polls, there is a large majority now, especially of many Labour voters, wanting to potentially even go back in the EU, which I don't think is a practical suggestion, but certainly to have a closer relationship, maybe in the single market, join the customs union. He has ruled all of that out and has not wanted to talk about it. When we saw the results last night, we saw a little bit of why, because the second place party in a lot of the seats that Labour was winning back were not the Conservatives, but the Reform Party, which, as you'll remember, David, is a kind of anti-Europe, anti-immigrant party that's the sort of remainder of the big campaigners for Brexit. So there's still quite many of the people who voted for Brexit, working class voters in northern constituencies, old industrial constituencies, they are still feeling aggrieved about Brexit, and I don't think Labour wants to go near it. They do want to unlock sort of smaller deals that will reduce some of these obstacles, the red tape, which you're absolutely right, has hit growth. And I think even that could have an impact. If they make it easier for importers and exporters who are now facing a lot more red tape, even without changing anything else, that could help trade at the margin and help growth.
So, Stephanie, let me push you here a little bit, because we have two big elections. We've just had the UK elections. Now we're about to have the second and final round of the parliamentary elections in France, which seems to be a quite different story, where actually you have, one would anticipate, substantially to the right candidate in Marine Le Pen, who looks like she'll do reasonably well there. The one constant seems to be anti-incumbent, but is there any through line through those two elections?
I think you've hit it, David. I'm on a bit of election road trip at the moment because I'm going to be going off to Paris and on Sunday to see those final results for myself. It's been quite the week, but it does look as though Marine Le Pen's party Rassemblement National is not going to win a majority, in part because they've been able to do the centre, which is very weak. Macron's party have been able to do some deals on the sort of case-by-case basis with the left, who are way to the left of certainly of the Labour Party in the UK. But I think the broader point, the death of the centre in France and in quite a few European countries, still stands. And I would say, you have Keir Starmer's now going to go off to the NATO summit. He's going to be the only leader there really around the table who has a spring in his step, who's not a lame duck or is not looking weak. And he's going to look out of step because everywhere else, the kind of technocratic, middle of the road, we're going to get things done by the traditional rules, by looking at the facts. That approach is not faring well in other parts of the world.
Are we also seeing overall a trend away from bilateral and multilateral agreements? We had such a long period of time where we were basically taking down barriers to trade and investment things, but a lot of these parties seem to be much more insular.
I think that's right. I mean, it's certainly true of the US, and then others are taking their cue from the US, but can't quite follow, obviously don't have the capacity, don't have the size of market to declare that they're going to be, put their own country first.